Welcome to another episode of the Prater Detroit podcast, an emergency episode because we're in the middle of free agency and a lot of things are happening around the NFL. A lot of things are happening to the Detroit Lions. My name is Jeremy Reisman. I'm the editor-in-chief at Prater Detroit. You can find me at Detroit Online. With me, we got a two-man crew rolling this time around. Ryan Matthews is with us at Ryan_POD. Ryan, how we doing tonight?
I am doing well, Jeremy. How are you?
Good.
Good.
And for the first time on an official POD cast, the managing editor of Prater Detroit, Eric Schlitt, is with us at Eric Schlitt on Twitter with a K. Eric with a K. Eric, how you doing, buddy?
Doing good, guys. Nice to see you on video here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's waste no time. Let's get into it. We did an emergency podcast earlier in the week. Since then, we have had two acquisitions for the Detroit Lions and a handful of players lost. Let's start with the positive news because we had some not so great news break literally right before we jumped on here. But let's start with the good stuff. Jamaal Williams. Now, everyone knows what I feel about acquiring running backs, so the Lions had to tread lightly here to get my stamp of approval, but they signed Jamaal Williams to a 2-year, $6 million deal, up to $7.5 million with incentives. If you were to look at Packers Twitter since news broke about at midnight last night, they seem to be quite devastated about the move, and that's enough to make me smile. But let's go to Ryan first. What were your initial thoughts on this deal when I'm assuming you woke up this morning and heard about it?
Well, so the funny thing is that I woke up probably around it was close to maybe 10 to 1 last night, and Twitter was way more active than it normally is at that time, especially for my Twitter feed. So there was the Jamaal Williams news, and I was not really, I wasn't totally surprised by it, but I was impressed with it, I guess, was my initial takeaway. I'm a fan of Jamaal Williams in terms of the dynamic he's going to add to the Lions backfield. I say I wasn't surprised by it pretty much because of our discussion that we had with Deuce Staley and the vote of confidence that he gave in Kerryon Johnson. However, I always talk about it on the podcast. The greatest ability is what, Jeremy?
Your availability.
That's right. And, while Kerryon Johnson did play in all 16 games last year, it's the first time that he did it. So, having an insurance policy like Jamaal Williams, I think, and I think he's going to be more than an insurance policy. I think that a couple of things, right? And I'll kick this over to Eric, but one, it's definitely not going to take any of the food off of DeAndre Swift's plate. That guy's still going to eat. So Lions fans, rest assured, Jamaal Williams does not eat into DeAndre Swift's workload. But what he does is he's the kind of back that Deuce Staley covets, right, Eric?
Yeah, absolutely. He wants a running back who's versatile. He wants a running back who can pass protect, and Jamaal Williams can do both of those things. And then to even extrapolate what his value is beyond that, you look at the fact that he's a power runner, which is something that they're missing. He's still young, and so there's an opportunity for him still to develop. And so there's a lot to like about him. You can use him in short yardage situations. You can use him as a spell for Swift. You can use him as a starter if Swift goes down, because it's not just Kerryon that's found himself injured. It's Swift as well. And he's shown that he's capable of being a starter. With the Packers, he played 60 games with the Packers, and 20 of them he was required to be the starter in those games. I believe the last time or the time before that even the Lions played him, he was the starter. I forget which one it was, but it was recently. And so he's not super explosive, right? Or he's explosive. He's not super agile, right? And so the agility, you're going to look to the other two, but he is patient, and that patience creates a lot of opportunities for him. And so, yeah, I do agree. I think he's going to slot in probably at number 2. Kerryon, I think one of the reasons he was probably healthy last year was because he was on a shorter snap count. And if we're being honest here, and so I am like Kerryon, and what he did as a rookie and what we saw in camp as a rookie was fantastic. But since his injuries, it seems to have taken a toll on him a little bit. Maybe he'll bounce back. The opportunity will be there. But for now, you have to think that the pecking order is Swift, Williams, and then Johnson will be third.
Yeah, and the reason I love the signing, besides the fact that it's fairly cheap, the official contract isn't out there yet, but someone threw out there, I think it was Jamaal Williams, social media manager, threw out some unofficial cap hits, which is 1.6 million this year, 4.3 million next year. And if that's true, like that's a fantastic deal for the Lions. But the other reason I love it is that this has been a hole on the Lions roster for years. They've been kind of rotating through RB1 as they draft guys, but they've been replaced. That RB2 spot has been filled with these 30-plus-year-old guys on the tail end of their career. They finally got a guy who's 25, productive in the RB2 role for years and years and years, and versatile. He can catch the ball. I know he's kind of thought as like a big bruising back, but he can catch the ball too. And like you said, pass protect, all that sort of stuff. He could potentially be that 3-down back if the Lions need it, if DeAndre Swift suffers that injury. So I'm hard to please when it comes to spending money on a running back, but I think the Lions did just about as well as they could have done. And Eric, this is a guy that you and I kind of had circled at the beginning of free agency.
Yeah, he was in our breakdown, right? Yeah. When we did the players to watch. He was in that. He was in that mix. Maybe he was in at least one of them. I know we did a couple of them. It's all starting to blend together at this point, right? But he was one of 3 that we identified, and so he was on our short list for sure because of all the things that we just addressed. Yeah. He's one of the better pass blocking running backs in the league, and that's a major staple for Staley. And now. I know Swift kind of dropped a little bit, but at one point, Kerryon was number 1. Swift was number 5 in pass blocking. I think when they finished the season, they were a little bit lower. But I believe of running backs who were in that's all 25% of their of offensive snaps. I think he was 8 or something. Yeah, he's up there. I mean, you're looking at 3 guys who all live near the top of that, and that's going to be pretty important, especially when you have a quarterback that needs pass protection in order to be successful.
Well, let's move on to the move that happened literally minutes after, as I think we had already crossed over midnight. The Lions agreed to a trade for defensive tackle Michael Brockers from the Rams. We learned today that the compensation that they had to pay was a 2023 7th-round pick, also known as nothing. Basically free. Obviously, the cost here and the reason he became free is because it was a salary cap dump for the Rams. He was going to cost them over $9 million in cap space. I think the one drawback that people saw in this trade was that the Lions were then going to take on a pretty big cap hit, upwards of I think $8.5 million. But news dropped today from Dave Burkett that he is going to be getting a whole new deal, of which we don't have the details yet, but you have to imagine, given how tight the cap is this year, that it'll probably cut into that $8.5 million in 2021 and be a little heavier down the line. So with all that in mind, I'm going to go right back to you, Ryan. Thoughts on the Michael Brockers trade?
Yeah, as if I wasn't impressed enough with as I'm scrolling through and seeing the Jamaal Williams news, the Michael Brockers trade seems like a huge windfall for the Lions. For a line that has just absolutely been starved for healthy, productive bodies for so many years, it's nice that the Lions are getting somebody who's been pretty steady. He's dealt with some injuries, but I think what the Lions are getting is a very stout run defender. Now, he provides some pass rush ability for sure, but one of the stats that I want to point to is from Pro Football Focus. In 2019, he posted the 5th highest run stop percentage among defensive interiors, and that was on minimum of 250 plays, and earned the 7th highest rush defense grade among defensive interior players. So, I mean, I talked about it a little bit on the last podcast we did, but I think that when it comes to this defensive line, I think it's really going to be about gap control, and it's going to be about making sure they stop the run. I think that's what the Saints do really well. I think that's what the Lions are going to aim to do. And the Brockers trade, hold this in comparison to a trade that obviously I shouldn't say reeked of desperation, but the Everson Griffin trade was a conditional 6th-round pick that could have turned into a 5th-round pick depending on the conditions. You get Michael Brockers for a 7th-round pick. I think this is a home run, Eric.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is an easy no-brainer. You're trading away a few 2 years into the future 7th-rounder for a starter. Like this is a weak defensive tackle free agency class. It's a weak defensive tackle draft class, and finding a guy in this draft class that's going to be able to come in and start and maybe play better than Brockers has. I don't know if that player is available in this draft class. Now, you can argue maybe a couple of guys at the top, but you're going to spend a lot more in capital trying to get one of those guys as opposed to getting Brockers. Now, he is 30. He just turned 30, so that's a bit of a downfall, and that's one of the reasons, I guess, why he's a little bit cheaper. But defensive tackles, they typically have a little bit longer of a shelf life, and so I don't think you're tied to much of his contract beyond this year, even in a restructure. Right now, he's set to make $8 million, and in 5 days, that the $6.5 million base is going to become fully guaranteed. So I don't know if that matters from a timing standpoint. If they can wait for that to become guaranteed and then renegotiate, it does. I don't think it really matters from a Lions standpoint. But they're probably going to convert a lot of that down to get, like Jeremy said, to get a lower number, and they'll push some into the future. But the nice thing is that's really all of the guaranteed money that they're working with. They have the opportunity. They have a 2019 option right now that'll probably become a guaranteed year. He's only got a little bit of money guaranteed in that as long as he's on the roster. So again, it's not that big of a deal to bring him in, give him an extension, and lower the number down. Now, from an impact on the field, again, this is a massive trade. You're acquiring a guy who's going to start for you. Okay. And the way that I envision this defensive line lining up is I'm kind of projecting them to be similar to the Rams. And by acquiring him, it kind of reinforces that to me, that I think he's going to continue to play that kind of 4-eye technique, which is right on the inside shoulder of the offensive tackle. And then he'll have a nose tackle, and then there'll be another guy on the opposite side, which with the Rams was Aaron Donald. I think with the Lions, that's going to be more like where Trey Flowers plays, kind of in that 3 to 5 area. You can also kick them out wider if you need to. They want to be flexible. Romeo Okwara talked about that today. They want to be flexible in how they approach things. So I do think you're going to see some 4-3 concepts. I think you're going to see some 3-3 concepts. So there's a lot of value to like in a guy like Brockers because he can do that. Now, when you go, I want to add one more PFF stat, because Ryan, you went to PFF. I found a good PFF stat too. He had 30 pressures last year. Okay. Danny Shelton, Nick Williams, Deshaun Hand combined 30 pressures last year. Okay. That's disappointing for last year, but also a step in the right direction for Brockers this year. Now, the last thing I just want to add is he's also a high character guy who's a leader. He's been a captain for the past 3 seasons. He's going to be familiar with understanding how the Rams front operates. So when they're in that concept, he's going to be able to lead that group. He's going to be able to point, train, and as a 9-year veteran, he has that experience, being that in a leadership role. So there's a lot to like in the locker room as well. So there's so much to like about bringing a guy like him in, because he's going to impact so many different areas of what the Lions want to do. Yeah,
and I was just going to touch on that last point too. On a defense that's really trying to establish a culture here, bringing in a guy like Michael Brockers is a great guy. I mean, he could step in and literally be a captain right away of this defense and basically tell everyone what they have to do, whether it's John Pennicini, a second-year guy, whether it's Deshaun Hand. I think a guy who could learn a lot from someone like him, or anyone they end up drafting. Eric, you put out an article today that actually listed where you think a lot of these new guys are going to play, Julian Okwara included, and you look at the defensive front and it's just like, that's not horrible. I mean, you're relying on John Pennicini to start, which is not ideal. I mean, a second-year 6th-round pick, but everywhere else, like if they and you always have to play the if game a little bit and get a little lucky. If they stay healthy, Lions might have an okay defensive front, and I feel like we've said that probably for the past 3 or 4 years. But with the new defensive coaching staff, I think there's at least a little bit of room for optimism there.
What I think is what's deceptive is there's depth. There's more depth than I think we thought, right? And it's not necessarily that this is like at a talent level as some of the defensive lines we've seen in the past, but a guy like Nick Williams can play more than one spot on this defensive line. Deshaun Hand absolutely can play more than one spot on this defensive line. And then you look behind him, Cornell, the rookie from last year, who we didn't even get to see because he hurt his knee in the first game practice of training camp last year. He was a defensive end that pushed inside. So again, he has that familiarity where he can play anywhere from the 3 to the 5 comfortably. And then Kevin Strong, beyond him as well, is a natural 3 technique, played 3 technique every down in college. And then in Detroit, they asked him to do more 2 gapping, which was completely new to him. Right. And he saw some struggling, but they kept him because his first step is lethal. He has a terrific first step. And so they kept him around because of that. This penetrating system that we are anticipating is going to be more beneficial to Kevin Strong as well. So it's almost like, they talked about the fact that a lot of these guys were misplaced and didn't know how to fit into the defense last year. I think that when we think about hearing that, when we heard that from Campbell, we thought, okay, these are like the secondary guys and the linebacker. I think it's a defensive line as well. There was a lot of guys that were playing in roles that weren't natural to them.
All right, we're going to take a quick break here. With the yin comes the yang, and there was also some sad news that came out of Lions free agency. The Lions lost a few fan favorites, including, I would argue, one of the best players of the Detroit Lions for the past 6.5 years. So we're going to get into that when we come back on this Emergency Detroit Lions Pride of Detroit podcast. Okay. Let me catch up on some alerts here before we jump back into it. Cordy Aaron with the 17 months says, goodbye, Prater. Throws a couple crying emotes in there. Lions 1910 with the 5 months. Jason D. Walker with the 2 months. Lions 1910 with the 100 bits and the shamrock emoji. Happy St. Patrick's Day to all you Irish people or you heavy drinkers out there. Lions Wow with the 18 months. And then Chesterfield gave out 2 gifted subs. And yeah, Detroit one-ups him with 19 months. Appreciate all the support, y'all. Love it. We did have a good question from our YouTube that I didn't want to let go. From Carl Kuster, sorry if I mispronounced. For Eric, based on your What the Lions Are Getting in Michael Brocker's article, where does a player like Micah Parsons fit on the Lions defense?
He would fit either at the Mike or he would fit at the Will. And if he plays at the Will, he can probably play both the on the line Will and the off the ball Will. In my opinion, that's where I'd put him. But I do think that he's capable of playing the Mike as well. Jamie Collins has a lot of the same traits that Parsons did. Remember, he was an edge rusher before he was an off the ball guy. So, I do think, though, that Collins is more comfortable off the ball now than he was earlier in his career, where I think you could use Parsons as the move around guy.
There you go. I'm trying to catch up on news and make sure we don't miss anything. Gerald Everett went to the Seahawks.
Yeah, I saw that.
I saw chat talking about that as well, but I think nothing too Lions related, so I think we're safe to jump back into the second segment. I know both of you are working on some schedules here, so I don't want to leave you hanging here. And we went a little late because the Matt Prater news, which we'll get into in a second here. Y'all good?
Yeah.
Okay. And we should probably talk a little Kenny Golladay too, right?
Yep, he's in the breakdown. We'll talk a little about him.
Okay.
I added some extra stuff there. Okay, give me a second here of silence, and we'll jump right back into it. And we are back on the Pride of Detroit Emergency Podcast, day 3 of free agency, or day 1, depending on which one you count. The legal tampering period is over. We are officially into the new 2020 league year. We just talked about the additions of Jamaal Williams and Michael Brockers. Now let's get to some of the players that we are saying bon voyage to, including Matt Prater, who right before we jumped on this call agreed to a 2-year deal, signed a 2-year deal. It is a done deal. We are now signing contracts. So he signed a 2-year deal with the Arizona Cardinals. Full contract details aren't out there yet, but a $7.5 million base is what we're hearing, which I believe is over the 2 years. So we're talking $3.5 million a year. Guys, I've had this discussion with both of you, and I think the conclusion we all came to was just like, yeah, it probably doesn't make a ton of sense to spend $3, $4, $5 million on a good kicker considering where this franchise is at. But get it done anyways, because I don't want to worry about kickers. And the Lions didn't get it done. So, let's just go gut reactions here before we start talking about who's next. Ryan, are you bumming today?
I wouldn't say that I'm bumming. I'm kind of in awe of how the Arizona Cardinals are putting together an all 2010 team with J.J. Watt and A.J. Green and now Matt Prater. But it's, like you said, Jeremy, we talked about on the last podcast, having the kicker situation nailed down and not having to worry about it. Prater's struggles aside from last season, whether or not he can return to form, I guess we'll be seen in the desert this year. But I think for all the kickalicious that we had to go through as Lion fans, it was nice to have a guy like Matt Prater who was way more on than off. And, you don't have to look far in the division to see where kicking goes just absolutely awry. The Vikings have dealt with it. The Bears made Cairo Santos the highest paid kicker in the NFL. There's just absolute lunacy that happens out there. So it was nice to have somebody like Prater. And, the point could be made that it was an expensive thing to do for a team that's in the middle of a rebuild, and maybe kicking won't be so super important this year. But it's going to be important eventually. And kickers have, Eric mentioned how defensive tackles have a shelf life. Kickers have a pretty long shelf life too. So it wasn't like you had to think so short-sighted with Matt Prater, but I'm not bumming. I'm just disappointed.
The most data response I've ever heard from you.
Well, I'm bumming. Look, from Eddie Murray to Jason Hansen to the kicker that you couldn't remember, Nate Freeze, to Hansen. It's been a pretty established kicking room for the Lions for a long time. The Nate Freeze disaster was awful. And for those of you who remember it, you don't want to relive through that. So, we've been spoiled, right? We've been spoiled. We're still spoiled with Jack Fox, which is nice. But
spoiled with kicking and punting. The Detroit Lions franchise. Awesome.
And long snapping. Let's not throw Don out of the discussion.
But I don't know. I assumed it was going to be a re-sign, so much so that I really haven't looked beyond a couple of guys who had connections and forgot that we had a guy even on the roster.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah, and let's I guess talk about that because I'm bumming with you guys. I think I don't know. It was just nice to have something to not worry about when you're talking about the Detroit Lions. It was nice, even if the reign of amazing potential Hall of Fame players was at specialists. Like at least we had that. Because it was the one thing we could lord over the Vikings and lord over the Bears. Now we don't really get that. So, the one guy that the Lions do have on the roster is a guy called Matthew Wright. And if you don't know anything about him, I don't blame you. He went undrafted in 2019 out of UCF. The Lions acquired him in the offseason, I believe. Is he a future deal guy? I think he was.
Yeah.
But he spent 2020 as a backup to the Steelers, actually got in a little bit of playing time there, went 4 for 4 on field goals. Congratulations, buddy. I guess he was also the all-time scorer at UCF. I can't say I know a ton about the guy. I think he's had a 75% completion rate at UCF, which was actually the exact same accuracy level of Matt Prater last year during his down year. So not a ton to be excited about there, but a rebuilding year, the guy has a cap hit less than $1 million. I guess there's no problem in just trying him out for a year and see what happens. It worked at punter last year, so maybe the Lions find something at kicker this year.
Yeah, I think the thing that we have to remember is that special teams coordinator Dave Phipp has taken an unknown rookie and turned him into a superstar in the past. So you never know. It did happen at punter, so maybe we can see lightning strike twice in the Lions kicking room.
Ryan, you seen any sense of optimism for the kicker, or are we headed towards a nightmare scenario of potentially drafting a kicker?
Oh God.
Okay, that can't happen. But what I do want to say is I have no idea who Matthew Wright is.
That's fair.
So
I mean,
yeah,
we got to get Hamza on here to give us some kicking tips. I know he's mostly a punter, but
Hamza could be a cheap option for the Lions.
That's true.
Doesn't he only punt though? I thought Hamza was a punter.
Move Jack Fox over to place kicker. I don't know. Just get wild with it. It's the 2021 Detroit Lions. Let's get nuts.
So I did want to mention the rookie kicker that Phipp did turn into a brief superstar was Cody Parkey. And Cody Parkey kicked a very important field goal that helped them secure their Super Bowl. And he was a big deal for a couple of years, and then he kind of fell off the cliff. But he's a free agent this year too, so it's possible, like maybe they bring him in to compete with Wright and see, and hopefully maybe a third. But yeah, it's not. It looks pretty uncomfortable right now.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to some of the other guys that will be playing elsewhere in 2021. Marvin Jones Jr. signs with the Jaguars to reunite with Jamal Agnew and Darrell Bevel. 2 years, $12.5 million on that deal, $9 million guaranteed. So probably going to stick around for both of those years, and a good chunk of change for a 30-year-old receiver. And then Justin Coleman signs a 1-year deal for $2.75 million with the Dolphins. A significant decrease in salary there. I think he was due to make upwards of $9 million for his base salary here before he was cut. I don't know if there's really much to say about either of those guys. I mean, I'm glad those guys caught on, but clearly the Lions weren't going to pay Marvin Jones that much. Justin Coleman, I mean,
I think that shows his value.
Yeah, right? I mean, it's a prove-it year for him, another prove-it deal, and I think we're going to see a lot of those with some of these Lions players after what happened under Matt Patricia, where these guys came in with all these high accolades. Justin Coleman was the highest paid nickel corner when he came into Detroit and was looking like he was playing like it. And then 2 years go by and, now he's making less than $3 million a year. So rough sledding for those guys. Any comments about those guys that you were, any like surprises about any of those deals? Or was that just like, that's about what I was expecting for those guys?
With the Jamal Agnew deal, I was pretty surprised at the price tag.
Sure.
3 years up to $21 million for a guy who has really kind of maxed out as like a specialist up to this point in his NFL career. So that contract seems to suggest that they're expecting something more out of him, and maybe they will. But the more surprising move was Marvin Jones. I thought that he was destined to become a Los Angeles Ram. It seemed like it made so much sense.
Yeah.
But, with their own cap situation and what they have going on over there, it just obviously didn't seem to work. And all of a sudden, Trevor Lawrence has like a bunch of weapons around him. Laviska Shenault, DJ Shark, Marvin Jones, James Robinson. There's an awful lot of talent that you're putting around a quarterback that's supposed to be ready on day one, right out of the package. So that's, I don't know. Look out, Jaguars. Catch the fever.
Duval.
I think the Agnew one is the one that surprised me the most as well, because what we heard behind the scenes here was that, or I think Burkett even said it on Twitter, that the Lions were looking at Agnew as a potential fifth-year option guy, where they offer him a similar contract that they offered Jalen Reeves-Maybin. And so that Jalen Reeves-Maybin contract, it totals just like $2.3 million, but it only costs like just over $1 million against the cap, and Agnew was eligible for that, and I think they offered him a similar deal, so they were looking at like a $2 million contract for Agnew, and then he gets one that averages. I don't even remember what his contract totaled out at, but it was like 7, right, or something like that.
It looked like 7, but it was up to $21 million. I think it ended up being more around like 5.5, 6 a year.
Okay,
but still a lot.
Significant increase.
Yeah, it still almost triples what the Lions were expecting of him. And I think when we look at like what Justin Coleman was valued at and then what he got on the market, and then what the Lions valued Agnew at, and then what he got on the market. I think it shows that the Lions are trying to give players cheaper contracts, trying to get better value out of them, and they're not trying to overspend, which was a key criticism of Quinn with almost every one of, like, he would sign 3 free agents in the first 2 days, right? And those guys would always be overpaid, right? Vitae, James, like, it just keeps going. Coleman, right?
Yep.
You could argue Flowers, even though I will argue with that with you. But yes, this is a different approach. Like, they're saying, this is what we think you're at. You're going to get triple that somewhere else? Well, all right, we'll send you a nice thank you on Twitter.
And to get a nice 6th round compensatory pick in the process, probably.
And maybe even for Matt Prater, too.
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly in line. If the initial numbers are accurate, the Lions should be in line, I should say, not necessarily get. It depends on what the Lions do over the next few days.
Yeah, and remember, there's only 4 max that they can get, right? So, but right now they're losing more than they're adding. So, in the right direction.
And one more guy that I want to talk about that the Lions are losing. They cut Danny Shelton in a move that saves $4 million. And it appears they're keeping Nick Williams, which I think is a reversal of what most people thought was going to happen. A lot of people thought they would cut Nick Williams as a guy who saves them a little bit more money. Definitely not as, purely talented, I would say, as Danny Shelton. But Nick Williams tweets out, "Let's see how these kneecaps taste this year." So that certainly seems to indicate that he is in with Dan Campbell. Must have had some sort of conversation with him or something that told him he was staying. I think we probably have to tie this back in with the Michael Brockers conversation, because I don't think the two are mutually exclusive here. I think if you cut Danny Shelton, you spend some of that $4 million on a guy like Michael Brockers. Am I right in assuming those transactions are related in some sort of way, Eric?
Yeah, look, you cut Shelton, then Williams tweets that out, and then like 6 or 8 hours later, you've traded for Brockers. Like, these are all connected. Yeah. Absolutely, right? Like, and I think with the nose tag, I think they need to free room up for Brockers, and they had to debate between which of the two they wanted, and they opted for Williams. Now, maybe it's because they don't value the nose as highly as they value like a guy who can play the 3 through the 5. In the Rams scheme, they use the nose about 60% of the time, and they split that between 2 guys. One guy plays like 40%, one guy plays like 20%. So you need some guys that can rotate to stay fresh, but you don't. It's not as vital of a position. And a lot of times the nose tackle will jet, and then you bring on an athlete off the ball, so that you can utilize. So from a schematic standpoint, again, from where Brad Holmes is coming from, a guy like Nick Williams could potentially play more than a guy like Danny Shelton. And so, it just came down to money. Maybe it came down to preference. It's hard to tell. But, yeah, I absolutely agree that all of these defensive tackle things all happened in succession because of, as part of a strategy.
All right, let's move on to the last news of the day that's relevant to the Lions, and that is of Mr. Kenny Golladay, who remains, as of Wednesday night, unsigned, but we finally heard at least a little movement here. It appears he's got a deal on the table from the Bengals. What's interesting about it is that it's a 1-year prove-it deal, which is not obviously what he's seeking. The other news is that he is going to visit the New York Giants sometimes this week to see what's going on there, which is interesting because it's been a while since we've heard about free agency visits. It wasn't allowed last year, and now it is, and I think we've forgotten that that's part of the process sometimes. But I think one thing is clear here is that the market there is just not what Kenny Golladay wants it to be. And you look down the pike of other deals, literally, as we're recording this, it looks like Curtis Samuel is getting 3 years, $34.5 million with the Washington football team. That $11 million rate. We've seen a couple other ones right in that rank from 11 to 13 million. We know Golladay wants 18, 19 million. I think it's pretty clear at this point he's not going to get that. But are you guys surprised at all by just how bad this market is for Kenny Golladay?
I'm not shocked. I'm not shocked from the standpoint that there are much cheaper, younger potentially better alternatives that are available in the draft. And it seems like it's a really deep draft class when it comes to wide receivers. And I'm not sure how it's going to, rank up and compare with the class from last season, because I think that might end up being like an all timer, but this one is certainly shaping up to be very good. The other thing that I found was really interesting from Malik Wright was that Golladay was the one who approached the Bengals about the 1-year offer because of the market.
Interesting.
Yeah. So the idea is that it's not the other way around with the Giants. They're offering multiple years, which is why it's a waiting game.
Right.
So when you have that, and now it's really interesting for Kenny Golladay, because what we've been on the podcast talking about is this is a guy who's going to turn 28 this season. If he ends up signing a 1-year deal with the Bengals, well, I mean, what if he gets hurt? Now all of a sudden he's 29 and he's trying to recoup that $18 to $19 million contract that he was, originally offered for the Lions. He might be really feeling he's obviously feeling the effects of it during this free agency period, but hopefully things work out the best for him. It clearly seems like he's no longer in the cards for the Detroit Lions. That's for sure.
I agree with that. And I do think the injury history is part of the issue that's slowing things up. The Giants want to bring him in before they're willing to offer him a contract. And I think that's because if they're going to offer him a multi-year deal, they want to know what his injury history is, right? Yeah. They want to get a full checkup on him. So even on a 1-year deal is not going to appeal to the Lions, especially at the price tag that he's going to command. And yeah, maybe it's going to be less, but it's a tough spot. And he's a unique type of receiver, right? You have to have a big arm QB that can get him the ball and let him win. And if your quarterback can't get the ball to him, he's not as valuable to you. And so that's going to limit his opportunities. And I am surprised it's only 2 teams talking to him right now. Maybe there's more that we just haven't been leaked, but there was so much hype around him. To have this market be awfully quiet is a bit surprising.
Yeah, I think that there was just like a lot of hype with all the potential free agent wide receivers, right?
Sure.
And then all of a sudden, Allen Robinson gets tagged, Chris Godwin gets tagged, and then everybody else is kind of looking around like, okay, well, I mean, there might still be a market for the Juju and Kenny Golladay, but it's interesting now with like guys like Curtis Samuel signing deals before guys like Kenny Golladay and Juju Smith that were perceived to be at the top of the market.
And it makes you wonder if those franchise guys, if those teams are regretting applying the franchise tags on those guys, because now you're paying. Again, right. This is another conversation where we're talking about overpaying and the Bears are involved in it.
And that's the wild thing, though. Like with all those guys getting franchised, you would have thought it may have driven up the price. Because, I mean, Golladay appeared to be in a class on his own in this free agency class at wide receiver. And, I mean, some of the hindsight or the reimagining of who Kenny Golladay is shocking to me, because I mean, Ryan, we were talking about him being a top 10 receiver at the beginning of last year. And now I'm hearing people saying he's not even a true number 1. He's a number 2 receiver. He should get paid like a number 2 receiver. This is why where is this coming from? Like, have you missed out at he can't separate? Like, okay, everyone loves the next gen stat that he can't separate, but forget that everything else that he does that is game changing. I mean, go back to some of the games last year. I know he only played 5 of them, but he made huge impacts on at least 3 of them.
Two things. One, it's the Janet Jackson effect. What have you done for me lately?
Yeah.
Okay. So when it comes to Kenny Golladay, Lions fans, they're pretty far removed from that Jacksonville game, where he's tweeting, money bag emojis.
Yeah.
But the other thing and I make this cross sport analogy because it was, and I'm not suggesting that Kenny Golladay is in the same stratosphere as like LeBron James when it comes to their respective sports, but like everybody hammered on LeBron James for like, oh, he doesn't have a jump shot. He can only get to the basket. Okay, well, like being near the basket's one of the easiest ways to score, and it's relying on his athleticism to get it done.
Yeah,
Kenny Golladay wins at the point of attack, like going and getting the ball. He's really, really good at it. It's not a fluke. Like he's done it year and year and year. So like, the revisionist history that's happening with Kenny Golladay is bad.
Yeah, it's recency bias, right? It's
Yeah.
it's like you said with Janet Jackson. It's what have you done?
Mhm.
And he's getting the cold shoulder right now, and because of that, people are starting to assume that that cold shoulder equals he's not good.
Right.
And I think that's just a false prophecy there.
By the way, the fact that we got Eric Schlitt to say Janet Jackson in his first podcast appearance, that is an all-time podcast. I can't imagine you've ever gone on a radio or your own podcast and said those two words.
I don't talk much music at all, so yeah.
All right.
Now everybody's just hoping for a nipple slit.
Okay, all right. Now we're definitely going to close it out. Thank you for joining us for this emergency podcast. We'll be covering more free agency throughout the week. We'll be doing a locker room session, hopefully sometime this weekend. If you don't have the locker room app, go get it. If you have an iOS device, we'll be there chatting about all the latest news. Obviously, there's some stuff still coming down the pike. Literally, while we recorded this podcast, the Lions made it official in terms of the Michael Brockers trade. We're going to have the Matthew Stafford stuff be official on Friday. So stick with us for all of that. But for now, thank you for listening. It's chaos. Be kind.
Call recording off.
Okay.
I think the Stafford stuff will happen tomorrow, maybe.
Oh,
right?
yes, tomorrow's not
You said
Friday.
Friday.
Whatever. I thought tomorrow was Friday.
It's 6:01.
Sorry, chat. Yeah,
I did the same thing.
But anyways, Eric, in case you don't know, I know this is your first time. We are still live on the internets. But
I have watched you on Twitch
That's
before.
Right. Okay, I just want to make sure because we kind of screwed the pooch with Justin Rogers once, and he was saying some stuff that I definitely
shouldn't
cut out of the YouTube video. But nothing too bad. If you guys have to go, please go. I'm going to stick around with chat for a little bit, but you two have families. I'm living the bachelor life. I have time.
Stop. You have Zazu. Don't sell yourself short, you dog dad, you.
That's what I have to deal with. Uh-oh. Are you getting into trouble over there, buddy? Are you okay?
You got a poopy diaper to change?
Yeah, I'm fine. But yeah, I do want to give you guys the opportunity to bounce if you have to.
By the way, I did throw that tweet into Slack, Jeremy, if you want to use that to update any Kenny Golladay post. Because I think it is a really interesting thing that Kenny Golladay went to the, the Bengals probably showed interest, and he was like, hey, 1-year deal.
Here, and I'll show our live audience here as well, if you can read that. Sorry, the outlay is a little different. So for what it's worth, Golladay approached the Bengals about a 1-year deal because of the market, not the other way around. Giants are offering multiple years, which is why it's a waiting game. Yeah, that's I don't know what that seems like. Listen, Galladay's agent has had kind of a weird checkered past. Like he's in the middle of a lawsuit due to some signing breach of contract, and Golladay didn't even show up for the arraignment or whatever. I'm probably messing up legal terms because I'm not a lawyer, but I mean, they screwed the pooch last year in not accepting a 18 to $19 million deal, and they probably should have foresaw at least there being some complications in negotiations this year due to COVID. There's that, and I don't see any benefit for Golladay on a 1-year deal. Like you said, it's way too risky for an aging guy. It also, I think it was Justin Rogers who pointed out he could get franchised next year, and then all of a sudden, when he'll be 30, finally looking for this big contract. And how many guys are going to be? You're looking at the deal that Marvin Jones got. Like that's what you can get, $6-7 million a year by that time, and you're way over past that 18-19 million range. So I think I feel like this is his last chance to cash in, and he better do it.
Yeah, that was a massive mistake by his agent, because when they were negotiating, we were full on into COVID. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he should have. We were writing articles about how the salary cap's going to drop.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And at the time, it wasn't just that it was going to drop. They thought it was all going to drop in 1 year, and that we were going to drop like 70 million in one. Right. And we dropped 20. Back then we thought it was going to be 70. Like it was a major misstep, and I think that's a big reason why he probably walked away from them. It's a tough spot. If I'm Kenny, I'm really doing my best to get a multi-year deal from the Giants.
Yeah.
Because I think he's going to feel a lot better about that. The 1 year there's so much risk, right?
Yeah.
And then Yeah, I don't know. Who knows how the franchise tag is going to interact next year? It's probably going to be lower again because the cap's lower this year. So that's a bad spot. It's a tough spot. Not what we anticipated from him at all. That's for sure.
No, and you gotta feel bad for the guy because I guess it almost feels like a little bit of hubris here. I mean, it was hubris to turn down the $19 million deal. I think it might be hubris again where he's just like, I'm willing to bet on myself on a 1-year deal. I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna play my balls off, but then again, like I said, like that could result in franchise tag next year, and that's not what you want. He's between a rock and a hard place here, and I think you're right. The Giants are going to be his best option, but I mean, and this is all New York media rumblings, but they're rumblings about culture fit there because they do kind of have a Patriots background there with Joe Judge.
The Quinn's right hand is now the one in the front office.
That's right.
Oh gosh, why am I blanking?
Kyle O'Brien.
I want to say Kyle. Thank you.
Yeah,
Kyle O'Brien is now the right hand in the front office of the Giants, and so if anything, that's an in for him, right? I think that'll help him more than it hurts him.
Yeah. I think part of the reason they're visiting those to see if that culture fit is there because, I mean, listen, like we all remember Kenny Golladay liked the post that Matt Patricia was fired. That happened.
So he's not going to New England, right?
So
that's what you're telling me?
He has the Matthew Stafford stipulation in his free agency or in his offseason. No to the Patriots.
He also doesn't play tight end, so I don't think the Patriots are interested.
But yeah, it's a fascinating situation there, and I mean, I might as well bring the topic up because it's everyone's favorite topic this offseason because the Lions haven't had a compensatory pick in 5 years, but it does hurt the Lions if he doesn't sign a long-term deal somewhere. So I guess if you're a Lions fan,
unless he makes big money.
Yeah,
unless it's like a 1-year deal, like $17 million or something ridiculous like that.
But I have to imagine if the Bengals are offering anything, it'll probably be double digits. I would imagine it's like a 1 year, 10, 11 million, and you have to imagine it might be incentive laden too, given the injury stuff.
Let me see who else. You got Kenny, Juju, Will Fuller, T.Y. Hilton, Antonio Brown, Sammy Watkins. It falls off the table pretty quick after Kenny. So if somebody wants a number one, there's only a couple options out
there. CJ Craig wants to know what you're sipping on there,
Eric. This is a Blushing Monk from Founders. It's fantastic.
Love me some Founders. Good memories over there on the west side of the state over at Founders, Ryan?
Yeah, for sure. Memories.
Faded memories at this point.
Yeah. I do remember you eating some mozzarella sticks, though.
That doesn't sound right.
Oh, no, that's not true, actually. They were chicken strips.
How dare you defame me on this podcast like that?
I'm sorry. My memories go into absolute crap.
It doesn't get better.
It doesn't get better. Are the Lions looking at any wide receivers? No word on it yet, but you have to imagine the answer is absolutely yes. We were going to get into kind of where the Lions go from here, but we got caught up in time. Wide receiver, I think wide receiver and cornerback are probably the two biggest needs of this team right now.
Safety
is up there too for sure. Those are the top three.
No movement on Josh Reynolds. That's a name that we've kind of touted as being really popular. So,
yeah, the longer this wide receiver market drags, the better it is for the potential player you're going to get, right? So, I think there are 4 or 5, 6, 7 signings before Josh Reynolds starts getting attention.
Yeah, and the cornerback market is also really slow.
It's picking up a little bit, right? You like Jackson and Griffin are off the board. A lot of nickels like Uze, Hilton. We just saw Jordan Lewis get signed as well. But you still got some big name veterans out there: Sherman, Peterson, Troy Hill. Troy Hill's an option.
Yep.
I'm interested to see how his contract compares to Justin Coleman's because I'd like to have him in Detroit.
Yeah, I mean, and I think at this point you probably have to suspect the Lions signed at least 2 wide receivers, at least 2 cornerbacks, at least 1 safety. So I mean, there's a lot of moves to come, and some of those probably won't come until the second or the third waves or whatever you want. Yeah, there's still there's still a lot to come.
Yeah, I think they're just waiting, right? Yeah. What's interesting is that on the lines, they're only looking at backups right now, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I maybe bring in somebody to compete with Penasini, maybe bring in or maybe draft a guy to compete with Penasini. But on the offensive line, you're looking at backup guard, backup tackle, but you have clear holes at starting roles at corner, safety, your second linebacker, 2 wide receiver spots. Like there's clear holes on those edges, which is, how Chris Spielman wants to build the team anyways, right? He wants to add talent on the outside. So that's where I think we're going to start seeing the movement next is filling those guys in.
Let me catch up on alerts real quick because I missed a couple things here. Mishman fan subscribed with his Twitch Prime for the 2nd month. Appreciate that. Avery Giovanni from the Spirit of Detroit podcast on YouTube gave us $4.99 on the super chat. Says, this is interesting. This is gonna get. Let me be clear. This is not me saying those words. This is this guy. This is Avery Giovanni saying it. Prater was a bum. Only had 1 solid year.
Ooh. When you wrote your article today, I was surprised that at 107 games in Detroit.
Yeah.
Is that what it was? I think there's more than 1 good year in there, just personally. I mean, that's a lot. I can't believe how long he was here. It just didn't seem like 107 games. That's for sure.
I mean, the stat that still blows my mind about Matt Prater, and as far as I know it's still intact, is the dude has not missed a game-tying or game-winning field goal in the 4th quarter or overtime in his career. His entire career. That's insane.
That's still active. That's correct.
Insane. Conan Eyes also resubbed for 4 months, 5 total. He said, ladies, on a scale of 1 to 10, how many 10s are you giving Jeremy's mustache? Great question. I don't know if there's any ladies watching. Certainly not many ladies that are watching that enjoy this, but if there are, CJ Craig just dropped a 5 gifted subs on the channel. Appreciate that, CJ. And then Patman just dropped 100 bits. Says, great stuff, you guys. I really appreciate being able to chat about my Lions. We're here for you, Pat. We love chatting about it too. That's why we're always here. Right?
Right.
That's my first time.
That is your first time. But you chat on other platforms. Oh,
like the locker room app.
Like the locker room. That wasn't even what I was talking about. Detroit Lions podcast. Listen, I can say it because Chris isn't here.
Are you allowed?
All right, I got dinner to go eat, so I'm gonna head out.
Okay, you're gonna miss LJ's impromptu list cast. But
okay. Well, no, I'm not gonna miss that.
Okay, top 5 remaining free agent targets you want. That's gonna be a tough one to pull off the top of your dome, but if you want to make it, let's make it 3. I think 5 is always tough for these off the dome ones.
Yeah. Hey, like Josh Reynolds.
Okay,
I'll put him in there.
Sure.
I mean, why not? I think the Lions could do a lot worse on the free agent market when it comes to wide receivers than a guy like Josh Reynolds. I think he's a solid, reliable starter.
You're just gonna give 1?
Yeah, I'm gonna give 1 because I don't have 2. I can put 2 more together, but I need some help.
Okay, that's fine. Okay. Go ahead, Eric.
You want 3?
Hit me with 3.
All right. Realistic, I think Troy Hill. Unrealistic, Anthony Harris of the Vikings. I mean, I'd love to have him as a safety. It's probably going to be someone like Trey Boston or maybe Keanu Neal, who they've been connected to. But I'm starting to Jones over Troy Hill a little bit here. I really think he could hold down that nickel spot. If it's not him, we've talked about nickel Roby Coleman, who also was a very good nickel for the Rams under Pleasant. So I'm really looking secondary right now. If you are talking about receiver, I know maybe Josh Reynolds is probably the most cost-effective guy. You're not really looking a lot of offense. So yeah, mostly defense. I'd stick on the back end. I'd say I want Harris Hill and let's say Anzalone, right? Alex Anzalone. So I can throw a linebacker in there, right? Even though it's probably be a part-time role. I think that's a guy who would fit real well in this scheme.
I have another name real quick.
Get it.
As far as wide receivers go, I don't think he's signed yet. And he has, this would come much to the chagrin of Lions fans, but like he creates separation pretty well, plays outside, can play in the slot. Keelan Cole from Jacksonville Jaguars.
I think he's still available. Yeah.
I'd imagine that Jacksonville signing Jamal Agnew, signing Marvin Jones, having DJ Shark, having Laviska Shenault, he's probably a guy who's not going to go back. So that's another name that I would be intrigued with at wide receiver.
Yep. On my rankings, I have Reynolds and Coles right behind him, and they're both. Nice. He's still available. Yep.
All right, my three: Josh Reynolds, LaMarcus Joyner. I think he can play nickel and also played his best football. I think at safety with the Rams, so a little familiarity there. Plus, he wouldn't count against a compensatory pick formula, and I think people enjoy that. I don't think it really matters that much, but people like it. And then for my third move, I'm trading for Matt Prater.
Respect it. Respect.
Yep. Count it.
It's ridiculous. I can't believe I stuck around for this.
All right, let's close it up then. Thank you to Ryan, thank you to Eric, thank you to everyone who sat here and watched. Like I said, we will have a locker room session sometime this week. I'm guessing, I don't know about if you fellows are up for another Saturday session, but that's what I'm personally aiming for. Hopefully things will have died down by then a little bit. If another big move or two happens, we'll be right back here on YouTube and Twitch. If you missed any of this, you can either go back and watch it on YouTube or Twitch, or head to our podcast feed, which will be up overnight probably. We'll post it on the website as well. But other than that, we can go raid someone. I know Alex Reno's playing some Pokemans. We can go raid him if y'all want, or we can. It looks like Darius Slay is playing some Madden. That sounds kind of fun. Do you guys want to drop in on that? Let's do that. That sounds more fun, right?
Than Alex Reno, for sure.
For sure. All right, so if you're on Twitch, you don't really have to go anywhere. We're going to automatically raid him, or you can just go and click on his name that should be at the top of the chat. Until then, YouTube, Twitch, appreciate you. You guys are amazing. Thank you for all the subs today. Katie, I think I missed your 100 bits. Thank you for the 100 bits. Patman, we already got your bits. Thank you for all the subs. Thank you for all the support. Thank you for all the chatting. We'll see you guys again soon. Oh, and there we go. Right before we go, Lions 821 with the extended subscription through May. Appreciate you, bud. Appreciate you all. Go say hi to Darius Slay and say he should request a trade to the Lions. All right, bye.